Real internet stalker experience. When my son was 4, we moved into our first house. It was also the first year we installed internet and bought our very own computer. For context, that was in 2004. Laughable, I know, but other expenses delayed our voyage into the interwebs. At this time, my husband had taken a very active role in church and was gone almost every evening saving the souls of the world. I resented this, but like a good wife, I did not complain. This was when the computer and the internet sucked me in and claimed my soul. At first, it was just the access to all the information that captivated me, but then I discovered online gaming and internet friends. I was naive to the internet, however. Learning to be cautious and anonymous was a hard lesson learned. It was a game that brought us together. First, it was just a small group of friends all calling each other by their in-game names, but it was good times. As the group of friends increased, there was a demand to buy our own server for the game and be a recognized group. None of us wanted to absorb this expense alone, so a clever idea was suggested that I buy the server and others committed to help pay for it via PayPal. This was my first experience with PayPal as well. I didn't understand that I was putting my real information out there for my gaming buddies to discover. I didn't know I could actually hide that info, I just didn't know better. But this was the beginning of being stalked. Every night, talking with the same people, more than I talked to real-life friends probably seems a bit twisted, but I found myself really addicted to this instant friend environment. No one asked you to watch their kids, or pick something up at the store for them, or help them pack so they can move. They were friends without all the reciprocation factors involved in real-life friendships. It was great. One of the guys that helped me pay for the server was, or became, incredibly nice to me. He began to tell me very personal details about himself, and a lot of commiseration began. He told me about having to care for his aging mother, and all of his time and money went to her care, and how he lost his wife because of this. I, in turn, told him about my husband choosing to spend most of his time toiling for the church and forgetting his family existed. We seemed to enjoy whining about our pathetic circumstances way too much, but hey, a sympathetic ear can be hard to come by. This friendship went on for months. We played our game, talked to all our friends, and sometimes, when it got much later, he and I would get to talk alone. I can honestly tell you, there was never anything beyond this commiseration, not on my end anyway. I knew he was much older than I was. I was in my 20s, and he was somewhere in his 30s, and I viewed our nightly rants as therapeutic more than anything, but he got something more from it I didn't expect. There was never an exchange of real names or pictures. I at least had presence of mind to think this was a dangerous and inappropriate step to take. First, he called me by my real name one night. I nearly fainted in my chair. Hearing my name pass into the void of internet space was as a pin dropping in a deserted concert hall. How? He realized my surprise and quickly told me it came from PayPal. Oh. I was nervous about this, but I was able to hide my information in PayPal for future purposes. Next, he told me he lived in a city that was no more than 30 minutes away from me. I had no idea he was so close. He told me he was driving into my city for business. This troubled me. I had this feeling he wanted me to suggest we meet. I said nothing though. I didn't know what to say. Something was going wrong at this point, and I knew it. He had mistaken my friendship and sympathy for something more. I knew it was time to create some distance, so in the next few weeks, I departed our voice chat when our other friends started to drop off so to avoid being alone with him. I thought this was helping, but I guess it created some new desperation in him. It was late at night. I was alone. My son was in bed. I was playing the game and talking with my internet friends. He was mysteriously not around on the game or voice chat, but no matter. I was relieved by his absence. A visitor this late? I was incredulous. Our house was small, just a tiny living room next to a tiny kitchen and a hall that led to a bathroom and 3 tiny bedrooms. The computer was in the living room. The lights were out, but I'm sure anyone at the door could see the faint glow of a monitor, though the somewhat sheer curtains. They might even be able to see the shadow of a person getting up from the computer to hide back in a corner and watch the door, not sure whether to answer it. I felt compelled to react, so I walked to the door. There was a locked security screen after all. I didn't need to be so afraid. I turned on the porch light and opened the door. A man with thinning hair, a pasty face, wire-rimmed glasses, somewhat short and stocky, stood there, on my porch, grinning back at me. My first thought was, this guy is going to try and sell me a vacuum at 9 o'clock at night. Really? He continued to grin at me. It was weird. Can I help you? Is there something you need? Just you. Stilling grinning. Excuse me? You look exactly how I imagined. The voice was sinking in with me. I know it's late, but I was worried your husband would come home. I couldn't wait anymore. I had to see you. OMG. It was him. Are you out of your mind? Someone had to make the next move. We both want this, but you're scared. You're damn right I'm scared. I thought if we could just meet once, you wouldn't be so worried anymore to leave him. I have some documents here, my pink slip to my car, my mortgage for my house, my bank statements, even my business card. I thought if I could convince you, I'm stable, and I have means. I can't believe you're at my door. It's a bold move, I know. Please, we could both be so happy. I could make you so happy. I can't believe you came to my house. You would have told me not to come if I asked first. I was so stunned by this. I didn't know how to respond. I was convinced I had a truly crazy individual on my front porch, though, and I was scared about how to proceed. I knew I needed not to sound angry or scared, so I tried my best to keep an even voice as I asked him to leave. I apologized for giving him the wrong impression, and his creepy smile melted into an intense, crazed stare. Silence. I was worried he would pull a gun out or do something stupid at this point, but I shut the door, even while he still stood there staring at me. Deadbolt, locked. I stepped away and to the side just enough to be able to see his shadow walk away from the door, but I didn't see any movement through the curtain. This meant he was still standing there, on the landing. It was a tiled porch 3 steps up with no rails. He either had to jump off the side out of my view or go down the steps where I could see his retreat. Nothing was moving, though. Was he still standing there, staring at the closed door? I started to panic. No more than 10 feet from the front door was a side door into the kitchen. Was it locked? I rushed around into the small kitchen to see the door unlocked. It was a door with 3 glass panels going down the front with a tension curtain over the glass. I could see his figure standing there at the door. Panic. I rushed at the deadbolt and secured it, but I didn't feel very safe knowing that door was mostly glass. I grabbed the phone on the counter and held it against my chest. What was he thinking? Why did he go to this door? Even while I was about to punch in 911, I saw his shadow retreat. I could hear his boots crunch on the pavement outside as he walked away. My heart thudded so hard under my breastbone that my whole ribcage hurt and I could hardly breathe. I just stood there, in the dark of my kitchen, listening to the sound of those steps walk away from my house. I was paralyzed with fear. I never called the police. I couldn't imagine how I'd begin to explain that some man I talked to on the internet, whose name I don't know, ended up on my porch and scared the shit out of me, even though he really didn't do anything wrong other than misunderstand my intentions. Even worse, I couldn't bring myself to tell my husband. I convinced myself he would think I encouraged it, and he would insist I stop my silly internet gaming activities, which he didn't like anyway. I was resolved to handle this on my own, but this proved to be almost too difficult. I never heard from this man directly again. At least, if he continued to stalk me, I could never be sure. But it consumed my life for about 3 months. I avoided my internet friends for about 3 days after his visit. I stayed off voice chat, kept AIM closed, didn't play the game at all. Then I loaded up the voice chat. No one had heard from him at all. He never logged in the game since. He disappeared. I started to regain some comfort playing the game, but every day of my life was plagued by a shadow of worry that he was out there watching me. I was scared for my little boy. I was afraid to leave my house, and I was worried every time my hubby left me alone. After about 3 weeks or so, one of my other internet buddies brought this guy up again. He said he wondered why the guy still played, but never came in voice chat and played under a different name now. He said he checked the IP from the old server logs or something. It was one of the other guys who helped maintain the server. I panicked about this. I was just starting to feel safe again, and to find out he was still playing, but under a different name, started it all up again for me. I realized I had no choice but to completely remove myself from this community and this game. I paid up the server for 3 months, left a message for one of the guys saying I would not be coming back because of personal problems, and went into internet hiding. I made myself a new AIM account that had no friends and was beside myself as to what game I should pick up. I even reformatted my computer because I was so paranoid. 3 months later, I convinced my hubby we needed a dog. All those nights of worrying were finally at an end. I found a new game and eventually a new group of internet friends. Found peace with a scary beagle on guard. Hard lesson learned though. It's very likely I made more out of it than I needed to. He probably never came to my house again, and he probably never meant any harm to me, but not knowing was the difficult part. Many months later, I needed to access that old AOL mail that I abandoned for some account verification purposes. At the time, I only used it for the instant messenger and to register for games and websites. I never used the email for anything personal. When I opened it up, there were many emails from him. I panicked all over again, but the dates were all old, of course. The last emails would have gone out in the week after I went into my internet hiding. As curious as I was, I never opened a single one of them, and I never used that AOL account again. I changed the password to something weird and ended up forgetting about it. True story that changed the way I interact with online friends. I had a stalker for 10 years. Mr. J first started stalking me when I was 13. He never approached me, he never tried to touch me or interact with me, but he was always there, in a nice bike and wearing aviator sunglasses. When Dad dropped me off at school, then when I took the bus back home, when I went to the bodega 2 blocks away, buy a popsicle, and before and after church. Sometimes under my window at night, his steps muffled by the distant sounds of coyotes. He never tried to break in. He never tried elaborated tricks to fetch me from school because he was already, without a doubt, an adult, or pretending he was a door-to-door salesman at my house or anything like that. He was just there, always there. The only times I ever heard him was at night. Sometimes he'd whisper, "Sleep well, sweet angel." And I did. For over a year, I never realized how odd it was to have an unknown man be wherever I'd go. I had learned at church that we all have guardian angels, so in my youthful mind, maybe that was mine. It was only after Paula Jean's stalker was arrested that I realized what that actually was. Paula Jean was one of those girls that seemed to be born to suffer in the kind of world that we live in. Her body was becoming adult too fast, while her mind was still childish, way more than the rest of us 13-year-olds, a dangerous combination. Thank goodness the worst didn't happen, but her stalker, a bald, repulsive man on his 50s, managed to grope her before someone called the police on him. As a girl who learned that her body was sinful, I think she never recovered from it. One of the teachers decided to have the talk with us girls. Pretty much, if you notice an older man following you, please let your parents or teachers know. If they follow you on the street and you're near a police station, go to it. And if not, enter a shop so you'll be a little more protected by the people inside. You're helpless if you don't surround yourself with reliable adults. It wasn't a lot, but considering it was over 20 years ago, it was almost progressive. Miss G never said it was our fault. She just said we needed to be careful, and taught us how to recognize a stalker. I think that the man in aviator sunglasses is stalking me, I told my best friend Annie after what our teacher said. I really liked Annie, but she was one of those girls whose perception of love and passion was already ruined by cheesy books like Julia and Sabrina that she borrowed from her older sister. You know the ones. I don't think so. He's young and handsome, and he never tried to grab your breasts. Maybe you'll date him when you're older. Are you crazy? He's a stalker, I replied, getting used to the word. Now being watched by him felt wrong, dangerous even. He's kind of dreamy. Don't you think he looks a little like Ryan Philippe? I ignored Annie and told my parents about the potential threat. After that, I changed schools a lot, multiple times a year. I barely bothered making friends anymore. I went to 2 other schools in my city, then was sent to spend the next year with my paternal grandparents. Mr. J, a nickname one of my few friends came up with, still relentlessly showed up everywhere I went, even in another town, but was careful enough to not attract other people's attention. Since he was young and good-looking, and always kept his distance, the police or my relatives never took it too seriously. My problem seemed like a mere nuisance to them, so much that I almost convinced myself again that only I could see Mr. J. After living with my dad's parents for a while, I stayed with my maternal grandmother, then with a myriad of aunts from both sides. I tried to behave and never bother anyone, but it also meant that I was always uncomfortable and lonely. Look at those green eyes, he's gorgeous. You should feel lucky, an older cousin told me when I was 15, after she was sent by her mother to keep me company. I wish I could give him my number. Of course, as soon as she tried to approach him, he disappeared. I hated how people just brushed it off as something harmless or even cool just because my stalker wasn't objectively scary. I decided to go to college in another state. Still, Mr. J was always nearby. Why was he so obsessed with a common, even ugly young girl like me? Why was he always relocating his whole life to pursue me? I'd never know. Even after I turned 18 and then 21, he never came to me. He just watched from afar. We never, ever talked. His decade of stalking only ended when I was 23 and got a job opportunity in another country. Mr. J didn't follow me to Europe. For the first time in my life, I was actually free. I didn't feel followed. I didn't listen to footsteps outside my window. I didn't dread seeing that shiny red bike. I never exactly feared him. It was more like the presence of a ghost, always making you anxious, always making soft noises, so you know it's there, always looming. An all-seeing eye, looking through all your vulnerabilities. From ages 23 to 29, I lived as normally as I could, and I spent my time focusing on my career, personal growth, and therapy. I didn't travel a lot because I feared that my stalker would come back, and I never have time to fall in love. But that was about to change. I met Tiago through work in a conference. He was from another branch, and I was tasked with showing him around. We clicked immediately. I couldn't believe that a successful man with mesmerizing emerald eyes and a lovely Spanish accent could fall for me, but it was all so natural. Our love was inevitable. We were meant to be. We couldn't stand to be away from each other, even during the first few days. We were always on the phone, chatting online, or together. I never felt such a connection with anyone, nor thought it would even be possible. My therapist was so proud that I finally opened up for love. Tiago and I got married exactly 1 year after we first met, and we lived together for 7 happy years. We got ourselves a nice house, a dog, and a beautiful son, and his family loved me. I never had a lot of contact with mine after I left the US, but after being so well received, I barely missed them anymore. There's no doubt that those were the best years of my life, but like all good things, it was bound to end. Abruptly, and in the worst possible way. 2 weeks ago, my beloved husband died in a motorcycle accident. I was a mess. Our time together had been so precious to me. We never fought because we were so alike, like we knew each other our whole lives. Every day with him was blissful, and with him gone, I barely had any strength to pull myself from the bed. His family helped a lot, especially with the house, the dog, and the baby. Once my pride and joy, now they were just shatters of the perfect life I'd never have again. As we mourned together, his mother went through old photo albums with me, her own way to keep him alive in memory. She said Tiago had always been handsome, but it became even more noticeable after his plastic surgeries. I didn't know that he had any. It was after another motorcycle accident, but he didn't like to talk about it. I guess he was 35 when it happened, so not long before meeting you. Did he change a lot? He was barely recognizable, but it couldn't be helped, since his face suffered some bone damage. She then showed me my husband in his childhood. First birthday, first tricycle, loss of first baby teeth. The pictures progressed in chronological order, and as he entered his teens, he started to show how handsome he'd be. They became sparser too. He went to study abroad when he was 15, so I don't have a lot from that time, my mother-in-law apologized. I froze when I saw 2 pictures of Tiago from when he was 20. I knew those sunglasses and that red bike very well. Is there a stalker in my dorm? Hi everyone. I don't really know where to begin. I'm not much of a writer, but so many strange things have been happening to me lately that I have to put them down somewhere. I used to read r/no sleep for fun, and you guys seem to give good advice to people experiencing things they can't explain. So here it goes. Everything started about 2 weeks ago when I moved into my new dorm. I had an eerie feeling about the place when I showed up. It's a 100-year-old massive brick building that looms over the dead yellow grass around it. Because I'm a transfer, I was the only one moving in for the spring semester, and I felt so unwelcome carrying my stuff through the doors while the other girls looked on. All of them moved in before the start of the school year, so they already had a few months to form their cliques, and I was definitely an outsider. At first, the strange occurrences were mild, just inklings of something wrong, like the feeling you are being watched. I attributed this to loneliness. Again, I hadn't had any time to make friends, whereas everyone else had been here for a semester. My parents also insisted on paying extra to get me a single room, which is really hurting me socially because I don't even have a roommate to hang out with. Then, my 3rd night in the dorms, things really started to get weird. I went to bed at around 11 p.m. I was half asleep when I heard a noise, like a creak. I trembled because I knew this creak. It was the creak of a door opening. There is something I should have mentioned earlier. The reason my parents wanted to get me a single is that my roommate at my old school and I had serious problems. She was randomly assigned to me, and she was honestly the vilest girl I had ever met. She always made fun of me for staying in. I was never much of a partier, more of a studier, and her boyfriend was a stereotypical frat bro. I could have forgiven that, but apparently sometime last semester, those two thought of a funny joke to play on me. We lived in an older dorm at my first school as well, and it didn't have air conditioning. There was a weird heat wave in September, and most of the girls, including myself, started sleeping in our underwear, no covers. After I was asleep, my roommate and her boyfriend would come in and take pictures of me and then share them with their friends. Apparently, they put some on a really popular website, and I got a text from a high school friend 500 miles away asking if I knew about these pics of me he saw. I was so ashamed. I didn't know what to do, and I cried almost every night. I still think back, remembering the door creaking open as I fell asleep, just thinking it was my roommate coming in for the night. If I had just rolled over, just opened my eyes, they would have seen I was awake, and I could have prevented this whole mess. I had no idea what to do. I didn't know if I should tell the police. How would they get proof the pictures were taken without me knowing? What if my roommate accused me of taking those pics because I wanted online attention, and then framing her when real-life friends found out? She was so manipulative, she would come up with something like that. I didn't want to tell my parents either, although they found out eventually. I didn't want anyone else, especially them, seeing those pictures. I have always been so shy, never really one to stand up for myself. I guess that's why I end up being a victim. Not this time. I emailed the website and made them take the photos down. Then, for once, I stood up for myself. And let's just say, that's why I had to transfer schools. Anyways, the door creaking open that night sent shivers down my spine. It was like a flashback. What if I really was being watched? What if my online reputation followed me here, and someone was trying to play the same joke on me again? At first, I thought I was being paranoid. I knew that ever since the incident last semester, I had a fear of being watched. But then I remembered the regret I felt over having just not rolled over and looked when I heard the door open. So this time, I did it. There was a pale woman, all in white, standing in the doorway. She looked like she was in her early 40s at least. She stood there very still, just watching me, observing me. I knew this had to be my imagination. I knew this woman wasn't real. If it had been a 19-year-old girl, I would have thought it was someone coming to spy on me with their camera, but there's no reason a 40-year-old woman would even be in the dorms. I was having a night terror. I had those all the time as a kid, and the stress of starting over at a new school had gotten to me. When she noticed I was awake, she closed the door. Still shaking, I tried to fall back asleep facing the door all night. I thought that would be the end of it. The next morning I went to talk to the RA on my floor. She was by far the friendliest person I had met so far, and I really liked her. I'm a psych major and she's a grad student in psych, so we clicked over that. I also figured she'd be a good person to talk to about the stress I had been experiencing and the crazy symptoms of it. I didn't mention the woman in white because I didn't want her to legitimately think I was crazy, but I told her about the feelings of being watched and the fear of having someone come into my room. She reassured me that everything was perfectly normal, given what I had gone through in the past few months. My parents made sure she knew about the roommate situation. I was still a little nervous and still felt the regular loneliness, but I felt much more relaxed. Everything was fine until tonight. This is where I need your advice. I was lying in my bed, staring at my ceiling. I tilted my head back and noticed something strange, something that shouldn't have been there. In the back corner of the room, the corner opposite diagonal from the door, I noticed a red light. I closed my eyes and opened them again, thinking they were playing tricks on me. Number. It was a red light. I got up to investigate. I stood on my chair to get a closer look. It was the red light of a video camera. I have no idea what to do. I feel so violated. Has it been there the whole time I've lived here? Has someone on the other end seen me change? Have they put it on the internet? I just covered the lens with some paper. I definitely plan to tell the RA tomorrow morning. I wanted to rip the camera off the wall, but I need it there for proof. If I take it down and bring it in, people will think it's my own camera, and I was just making this up for attention. I can't sleep. There are so many weird things happening to me. What should I do? If it seems like you guys are interested, I'll keep you updated. Update. So I've gotten a few replies so far. Thank you all so much for helping. Tonight was the first night I noticed the camera, but I usually face either the wall or the door. Plus, it's kind of a small camera. I've spent the past few hours going through my room, looking in under everything, even lifting up the mattress. I haven't found anything suspicious. Some of you have suggesting going to the police. That's a good idea, and I'm thinking really hard about it. The only issue is, I'm sure once they get my name, I'll be dismissed because of all the stuff that went down with my roommate last semester, especially since this involves a camera again. But the more I think about it, the more I realize I can't risk my safety. Update number 2. Okay, I've made up my mind. This is nothing to mess with. First thing tomorrow, I'm asking to call the cops. I'll let you all know what happens when I can get on the internet again tomorrow night. I think my stalker has found me again after all these years. I always saw Marilyn walking 3 huge dogs in the park. She was a little 5'1" woman walking these giant Bernese mountain dogs and handling it with ease. I was in love even though I didn't know a single thing about her. I worked up the courage to talk to her. She was nice but hesitant. She seemed like an exceptionally wary person. I was patient and earned her trust. I slowly discovered she was everything I had built her up to be in my head, and then some. We dated for months without her ever inviting me to her place. She always said she lived at the edge of town and hated it, but it was odd and unnerving. I spent a lot of my time wondering what the issue was. Was she married or a hoarder? We were 6 months in and had too many drinks when I confronted her on never inviting me over. I wasn't taking no for an answer. She had to bring me over, or I was breaking up with her. Marilyn brought me home. She wasn't married. She wasn't a hoarder. She did live on the other edge of town in a little house filled with her giant dogs. Nothing was out of the ordinary. Things didn't stay that way. Marilyn's dogs behaved strangely. They would start barking or growling at random spots and corners of the house, as if there was an intruder. This also got worse in the middle of the night. The dogs constantly got up around 3 a.m. barking and going crazy and sniffing all around the room while we slept. I think I knew what scent they were picking up on. It was a male scent. Musty cigarettes, sweat, and the sting of men's deodorant trying to cover it all up. It was so strong I was getting ready to confront Marilyn on it. Did she have a man who was staying there when I wasn't there? The power of the smell was undeniable, as was a strong presence of someone else in the house. I asked Marilyn about it. She was very matter-of-fact. She was haunted by a male spirit. It always lingered. She didn't think it was dangerous, but it was scary, and it wasn't the house. It was her. It had been with her for a couple years now and different locations. She asked if it was a deal breaker. No, I was all in. I loved her. I could deal with ghosts. I could deal with feeling like I was always being watched. I could deal with never feeling alone. I wasn't prepared to deal with what the actual reality was, though. We spent time at Marilyn's place. Those supernatural oddities always lingered. She explained she got the 3 giant dogs to protect her from whatever it was. Everything had become kind of second nature to me until one day when we walked into the house and Marilyn peeped right back out the living room blinds. "I keep seeing the same middle-aged woman everywhere I go," Marilyn whispered. I had no idea at the time that sentence was the opening line to a horror movie the two of us were about to live. "She's plain, always wearing a hat, sunglasses super small, and always driving a white car, a Honda," Marilyn went on. I knew the car. I had seen it several times in the past few months. I also could picture a woman, hat, sunglasses, small. She always seemed to be around like an extra in a movie about my life. It was my time to admit something to Marilyn. I had a stalker, and apparently she was back. I dated a girl named Savannah for nearly a year in my early 20s. She came off as just sweet at first, obsessed with me in the right way, then it became the wrong way. I'll spare too much detail, but I at one point found out that she was secretly recording almost everything we did in her apartment, and she collected random things of mine. Loose hairs, keeping socks and underwear, even nail clippings. She also seemed to be developing an inability to be away from me for any period of time. She was showing up at my office every day, making me go to long lunches. A couple times I was just running errands, and I thought she was following me in her car. It was too much. We had only been together for a few months. I broke it off. Savannah didn't take it well. She kept calling and texting me nonstop, kept showing up at my office, my house. She wouldn't take no for an answer. I eventually threatened a restraining order and pressing charges. She was in medical school and wanted to become a doctor. She knew that kind of thing could really affect her career. She finally relented. I remained connected to Savannah on social media. It appeared she moved to another state, got a boyfriend, and eventually married. I mostly forgot about her. She was definitely the middle-aged woman who was following us, though. Her build, the way she moved. It was all her. I just had never thought it was possible. She was also clearly trying to make herself look older and more plain than she really was. A distant friend of mine I hadn't talked to in years was still connected to her through his girlfriend. I hit him up to see if he knew what the deal was. My friend provided anything but comforting information about Savannah. She hadn't moved out of state. She wasn't married. She didn't have kids. As far as he knew, she still lived in the area with her parents, had dropped out of med school, and was a recluse. He also didn't think she had social media. I did some investigating. The social media accounts of Savannah's I was still connected to were flimsy. Barely any friends or followers or content. I did some research of people I knew she was actually related to, and it looked like the man in her life was actually her sister's husband, and the kids, her niece and nephew. She may have been maintaining them just to throw me off. It also started to click with me. I had seen that white car a lot even before I was with Marilyn. I had also seen a plain, middle-aged woman with long black hair that I now thought looked like a wig, always wearing a ton of clothes, even in the summer. I just never thought to think anything of it. I was sure Savannah had probably been stalking me all along. It probably never stopped. She was probably just turning up the heat since she saw me get serious with Marilyn. Feeling her grip slip away, I was going to follow through with the restraining order this time and pursue pushing Savannah away for the full extent of the law. Only problem was, I had to prove it was her and she was doing it. Restraining orders are a lot harder to set up than you might think. I was always on the lookout for Savannah with my hand in my pocket, ready to whip out my phone to take a photo or video. But it was like she knew. I never saw her or her white car again. The only problem was the haunting, and the agitation of Marilyn's dogs in her house got more and more intense. It seemed to be all hours of the day now and more jarring, the dogs getting full-on angry, the presence in her house slamming and locking doors. It got so intense, we started setting up cameras around the house to try and capture something. It didn't work until one of them fell behind the couch and accidentally got aimed at the backyard for a day and night. The first video alert hit me during the day while I was at work. A neighborhood kid walked through the yard, nothing sinister. It was so harmless I didn't even remember to move the camera when I got home. The next time I woke up to a ring notification in the middle of the night. I checked the camera and saw the neighborhood kid again, in the backyard again, but this time moving towards the back door. I was no longer just writing this off as an innocent neighborhood, teenage boys will be boys moment. I shot out of bed, ran out of the bedroom, and took to the living room flanked by all 3 dogs. I was startled by what waited for me inside the living room, not outside. A tall young man faced the doorway, the image of his broad back, cloaked in a t-shirt flashing before my eyes for a second before he was gone. The dogs weren't bothered by the flash of a presence of the man. They ran right for the door and kept erupting with barking. I checked the Ring app. I saw the kid walking out the backyard and disappearing into the darkness. I breathed a sigh of relief and tried to calm the dogs. Then I heard Marilyn scream from the bedroom. I rushed to the bedroom and found Marilyn standing next to the bed and looking over at the window in horror. It was the middle of summer, and we were fighting the heat, sleeping with the windows open. I could visibly see the screen had been cut, and the blinds in front of the window were swaying on a windless night. "Someone tried to grab me," Marilyn whispered to me, staring at the darkness of the window. A thought came over me at that moment just before I started to comfort Marilyn. I wasn't so sure it was a neighborhood boy who terrorized us that night. The size, the movements on the Ring camera, it all added up to Savannah, but dressed as a teenage boy. I took the footage to the police and tried to get that restraining order on Savannah. They said it couldn't be proved it was her in the videos. It was a failure, but it didn't matter, because it all stopped. The appearances of Savannah and the haunting. Marilyn and I and the dogs were finally able to rest easy. We settled into life at her house. We made it a year with everything going perfectly. We fell full into love. I proposed. She said yes. I moved into her place. We slept with her giant dogs every night, safe and happy. Then the haunting started to pick up again. It was intense. We would be lying in bed and hear someone walking out in the hallway, Or we would be in the bathroom and suddenly see a man standing behind us in the mirror. I had to learn to live with it though. I loved her and it just was what it was. I hoped it would get better. Something else unfortunate started to happen after the haunting got bad for a while though. Savannah was back. It took a while to see it because she was changing vehicles so much and changing her looks. She had gained a ton of weight and wore shoes which made her look taller. We went back to the process of trying to capture her in photos and videos, but again, she seemed to know when we were onto her and disappeared. There was another calm for a few weeks. It didn't feel the way the one did before though. It felt more like the eye of a storm. It came at night again, the haunting. Marilyn and I were asleep in the middle of the night. All of the lights and electronics in our bedroom flashed on. We woke right up. I saw the split-second image of the silhouette of the man by the bedroom door. It was such second nature to me at this point, I didn't even bat an eye. It was different this time, though. The image of the man lingered, and I finally really got a look at him. He was young, probably around 20, dark hair, dark features, tall, thin, and a little rugged. I heard Marilyn whimper and looked over to her. She was crying as she looked at the young man. Then my attention was drawn to the door as it opened slowly. I held my breath and saw a shadow step just inside the room. I saw the sight of a gun emerge from around the corner. I froze like a deer in the headlights. Whoever was aiming that gun at Marilyn and I had a wide open shot. I could sense they were about to pull the trigger. I closed my eyes. In that little moment of darkness, I heard a scuffle break out. I opened my eyes and saw the male figure wrestling in the doorway with whoever had the gun, and the male figure was winning, forcing them out of the room. I don't know what came over me, but I rushed in that direction, leaving Marilyn and the dogs still frozen behind me. I was out in the hallway and watching the person with the gun get chased out of the house. I followed them into the living room where I saw a window broken out. For another time, I was able to recognize who was terrorizing us. I could see her small, frail frame trying to fight off this powerful spirit of a young man. There was no denying it was Savannah with the gun. I saw Savannah on the ground, trying to fight off the spirit and struggling. For a second, I kind of felt sorry for her, down there on the ground, tiny and hurt and insane. I doubt stalking us and getting pummeled by a ghost was what she had always wanted in life. She was simply sick. Those thoughts were running through my head when I watched Savannah slip away from the spirit and rush out the window. I had a feeling I was never going to actually see her again this time. I also had a feeling about that with the spirit of the young man as well. I looked at his back as I heard Savannah run away into the night out the broken window. The spirit of the young man turned to me for a brief second. I saw a sense of relief on his face for a moment. I felt someone approach me from behind. I was startled at first and turned around to see Marilyn and the dogs walking into the living room. The spirit of the young man finally turned around. I watched him meet Marilyn's gaze. The two of them held eyes for a very long time. Everyone silent. Tears gushed out of Marilyn's eyes now. I watched the spirit of the young man nod to her. I watched and heard Marilyn start to break down. I looked over again, and the spirit of the young man was gone. Then I went to comfort Marilyn. I had connected some dots before Marilyn even started mapping them out to me. The spirit which had been hovering around us and haunting us was of her older brother, Casey. Casey died in a snowboarding accident years before, shattering Marilyn's young life. Her brother had been her hero and protector, and he was gone suddenly when she was in her vulnerable teenage years. Casey had always told Marilyn he would be there for her. She thought he was actually ramping up his presence and haunting when he knew Savannah was hovering and coming for us. Casey pushing himself back into our world to protect her. The whole thing actually made Marilyn feel good. It gave her some comfort and resolution with Casey. What happened with Savannah was not comforting. We had a ton of video evidence of her, and the police were finally okay with moving forward with several charges. Only problem was, the police couldn't find Savannah. She had moved out of her parents' house weeks before, and no one had any contact with her. Marilyn and I weren't as scared as we could have been, though. We had a feeling someone would protect us. I have a stalker. She looks exactly like me. About a month ago, I was casually strolling through the local shopping center when I noticed something peculiar. There was a girl who looked very similar to me. She was slightly taller and thinner, but other than that, she seemed as though she was a perfect replica of me. She was even wearing the same clothes as I was that day. We exchanged glances as we walked past each other, but I didn't say anything to her. I just kept walking while telling myself that it was just an odd coincidence. But as the day progressed, we kept crossing paths with each other. It was almost as though she was following me. We never spoke to each other, though. When we did pass by each other, it was usually from a distance, but it was clear that something strange was occurring. It couldn't have been plain luck that we kept crossing paths that day, but that wasn't the end of it. The next day, I was on my morning jog minding my own business when I suddenly ran into the same person again as I turned a corner. Just like the other day, she was wearing the exact same jogging outfit that I was wearing. It was clear that she too was on a morning jog, made clear by her sweat and jogging outfit. She was even listening to music through earphones just as I was. We both let out a nervous chuckle, and then I proceeded with my jogging, just as she did. Later that day, as the sun was setting, I decided to eat at a restaurant for the night, as I didn't feel like cooking a meal. I went to my usual restaurant, a place called the Plinko Dine. I took my seat at an empty table and placed an order. As I waited for the waiter to bring me my meal, I noticed a girl in a nice-looking dress sitting across from me at another table. She was with 3 other individuals, who I assume were her friends. I don't think she noticed me that night, but I definitely noticed her. She was following me. There was no doubt in my mind now. It was later that same night. I was walking home alone, still thinking about my potential stalker, when I suddenly heard a voice call out, "Excuse me." I turned around to find her, the girl that had been following me. I noticed she was still wearing the same clothes as me. She was even carrying around a purse that looked just like mine. She continued, "I've been seeing you around quite a lot lately. Do I know you?" I can't quite remember what happened next. We talked for a bit, then she just walked away. We kept crossing paths for the next few days. She would follow me around wherever I went. She was always wearing the same thing as me. She didn't always notice me, but whenever she did, she would always hastily walk away as if she was trying to hide from me. One very notable incident was at a doctor's office. I had an appointment with a specialist. While I was in the waiting room, the same girl was sitting across from me. She was reading a magazine, trying her hardest to not make eye contact with me. A doctor came out of his office soon afterwards. He called out my name, Lucy. As I stood up, so did my stalker. That's when I realized we even had the same name. My specialist was checking my health progress that day. He gave me a lecture about my health, but I didn't pay attention. I was too preoccupied pondering about the girl. There was no way all of this was a coincidence. She went wherever I went. She wore the same clothes as me. She even had the same name as me. It was clear to me that this was a Class A stalker. But why was she stalking me? My specialist was still going on about my poor health conditions, something about me not taking my pills, or some other bullcrap like that. I still wasn't listening. I didn't care about anything he had to say. As I left the doctor's office and walked over to my car, a voice called out to me. It was a familiar voice. "Hey." I turned around to find the girl. She looked sad, mad even. "Listen here, you creep. If you don't stop stalking me, then I'll call the police, you hear me?" she shouted. She proceeded to walk to her car. Then she drove off. Is she crazy? I thought to myself as I stood in confusion. Did she really call me a stalker? If anything, she's the stalker. A few weeks went by. I hadn't seen the girl since the day we ran into each other at the doctor's office. I was feeling quite depressed for some reason. After weeks of staying shut inside my house, I finally decided to come out. It was pouring heavily that day. I walked to Lucy's house and stood staring at the front door. There was something I had been meaning to tell her. Something I had to tell her. The window was already broken, so I let myself in. I walked into her living room, and that's where I found her. She was hiding behind a tall, muscular man. The man was holding a knife. The man looked furious. "What the hell do you think you're doing in this house?" he shouted. Lucy looked frightened. I noticed a pack of condoms lying on the coffee table. The situation was clear to me now. Today is Friday. I'm writing this 3 days after the incident with that man. Lucy is happier this way. She will be happier this way. The police are at the door. They won't find us, though. I hid her. Somewhere they'll never find her. I confessed to her. I had to. She just screamed when I told her, but I don't care. She's mine, all mine, and no one is going to take her away from me. Facebook Stalker. I grew up extremely privileged. Gated neighborhood, private school, cleaning ladies. The area I lived in had a general yuck, poor people sort of vibe to it, which is why, when I smiled at the valet, something must have clicked. I was about 15 years old when me, my parents, and my older brother were all invited to dinner at a golf club about 30 minutes from where we lived. There was a valet service at the club, which was not out of the ordinary, and since it was raining and my mother couldn't imagine walking more than a few seconds in the rain, we pulled up to the front to have a valet go and park our car. I remember being in a really good mood that day, so when the valet took the keys from my father and thanked us for coming to the club, I smiled at him and thanked him back. Dinner was nothing special, and neither was the week or so following dinner. We got our keys and our car back just fine, and we went about business as usual. One Saturday night, my best friend was throwing a birthday party. It would be my first real party, as boys would be there and her parents would be out of the house. I was obviously very excited, and by the end of the night, everyone was tipsy and paired off with someone of the opposite gender, including me. The next morning, I was planning on staying at my friend's place until my headache receded, but my mom called me home much earlier than expected. She had received a Facebook message from what was obviously a throwaway account. The message said that I had attended a house party with alcohol and lewd behavior, and the messenger wanted my mother to know so she could keep me safe. The message would have been strange to begin with, but the fact that my full name, first, middle, and last, had been included was even creepier. Regardless of concern over the message, my mom grounded me and volunteered me to babysit for the neighbors. So, instead of spending my Friday night hanging out with my friends, I was over at the neighbor's house watching their children. Overall, the time I spent with the kids was not terrible. They were good kids and went to bed early, so I had the house to myself until midnight when my dad would pick me up. I had been trained not to answer doors when I was home alone from a very young age, so when I heard the knock at around 9:30 that night, I didn't answer it. In fact, I moved a little farther away from the door and turned the volume on the TV down so that whoever it was didn't know I was there. I can't remember what justification I gave for someone knocking that late, but whatever it was, it calmed me down when the person left. And then came the knocking on the glass door in the back of the house. I bolted up, grabbed the house's cell phone, and booked it up the stairs. I woke the older girl, ushered her into her younger brother's room, locked the bedroom door, shoved a dresser in front of it, and called my mom. She called the family, who came home immediately. No damage had been done to the house, but there were footsteps outside. The police couldn't do anything, so I shook it off but vowed I would never babysit again. Nothing strange happened for a few months, and at this point I was well into my freshman year. You could say I fell into the wrong crowd, but my mother had no knowledge of this. And then came the second message. It was from a different account, but the person's name was the same. It contained roughly the same content, saying I was drinking and getting involved with boys, but it also wrongly accused me of being into some hard drugs. I vehemently denied these allegations to my mother, and she believed me. This time, she called the police and told them that someone seemed to be watching her underage daughter. I was grounded again. Just a few days after the second Facebook incident occurred, my family went out to dinner. We locked the house up as usual and went out. When we arrived back home, the front door was open, moving slightly in the wind. We were absolutely terrified and called police before going inside. They searched the house thoroughly and told us that the good news was that no one was inside. The bad news? My room was absolutely ransacked. I started crying. To this day, I can't truly tell you why. The eerie messages combined with the babysitting incident piled on top of a home invasion just left me a wreck. We went through my room trying to figure out what had gone missing. The list included my school ID, a picture of my boyfriend at the time, my laptop, and a bottle of alcohol I had kept hidden under my bed. Creepiest of all, though, was that a bra I had bought just the week earlier was also gone. My mom didn't know about it, because it was something I had bought to impress my boyfriend, but I had to tell both her and the police. And honestly, any possibility of embarrassment was absolutely gone. I was sufficiently terrified, and so was my mom. When the responding officers were updated on the overall situation, my family was driven to a friend's house in unmarked police cars. As these incidents seemed to likely be connected, and this person was clearly following me everywhere I went. We were told to call the police anytime something suspicious happened, and the officers made a promise that someone would always respond, no matter how minimal it might seem. Things were okay for a little while. I was still paranoid, never going anywhere alone and refusing to stay at home without someone else with me. And then everything started up again. My boyfriend called me, saying that someone had followed him around when he was shopping with his mom. I asked him for a description of the man and gave it to the police. That was a step in the right direction, I thought. At least we might be able to visually identify him. Thing was, he seemed to be stalking my boyfriend now. Our families were friends, so we did dinner together, and then all the kids, me, my brother, my boyfriend, and his younger sister, decided we would go outside for a walk. It was steadily getting dark out, and we were about 5 minutes away from the house when it became completely dark outside. Everyone was fairly tired and pretty quiet as we walked toward the house. My brother stopped dead in his tracks right in front of the driveway and shushed everyone. We listened. There was rustling in the bushes. It was loud enough that it was clear it could only come from a person or a very large animal. And since there were no very large animals in the area, it had to be a person. Slowly, we all turned around and walked quietly back across the street, finally getting far enough away to call the police. We also called our parents, telling them it sounded like someone was outside and to lock all the doors and not leave the house. We were safe in our current location. We were sat next to a streetlight, so we could see everything around us, and the house was close to a block away. A lot happened once the police came, so I'm going to do my best to summarize. As soon as the cops flashed their lights toward the house, someone came running out of the hedges. The officers managed to be fast enough to tackle him, wrestling a knife out of his hand. There was a lot of panicking and a lot of crying, most of it on my part, but they got the guy into custody and everyone went home, though I don't think anyone slept. A few days later, the police got back to us regarding charges and the overall situation. The man worked as a valet at the golf club we had gone to. In addition to the knife, he had a copy of our house key he had apparently made himself after taking pictures of it from off Dad's keyring. When questioned, the man told the police that he was in love with me. Somehow, he managed to follow us home from the golf club that first night and watched our family. He decided that my parents weren't taking good enough care of me, which is why he sent the messages to my mom. He didn't like the fact that I was left alone in a house I didn't know, which is why he scared me while I was babysitting. He wanted me to go home. The more he followed me, the more he thought I needed to be saved. He hated the fact that I had a boyfriend, and when he broke in, He took everything he thought I could use to do something supposedly bad. The end game was to kill both my boyfriend and my parents. I think he's in a mental hospital now, but I honestly don't know. The whole ordeal has left me with years of paranoia and fear, and we ended up moving across state lines a few months later. We haven't used valet services since. I was excited to have a stalker. At first. My dearest Angela, your beautiful, lush hair flowing in the wind as you carried your groceries out to your car was the most elegant event I have ever seen in my life. When you got out of work and accidentally spilled your coffee on your coworker, and you decided to help clean it off her, it proved to me that you are a wonderful soul. When you were clipping your toenails, you saved them in a pile so they wouldn't go everywhere. These are just small events that make me fall for you. I'm proud to say that I truly love you. That note was taped to my window about 3 days ago, sealed in an envelope. Someone has been leaving notes for me for the last month or so. I've tried going to the police with the first note, but they thought I was crazy and conceited, and that I just wanted attention. I haven't tried going back. To be honest with you, I kind of enjoy the notes. I enjoy being the center of someone's world. I know that if I tell my parents about these, they'd freak out, so I haven't yet. As long as he doesn't do anything to me, I guess I'm fine with it. The weird thing is, the morning, the delivery man dropped off a sealed box on my front porch. I opened it, and it was a DVD. I guess he made a video for me? I open it and put it into the DVD player. Static. It was a man sitting at a bench by the lake, back turned to the camera. My dearest Angela, I'm so glad that you decided to watch this video. I guess that I'm getting closer to finally introducing myself. Just the thought of that makes me filled with excitement, but also anxiety. I have a tendency to fall for people too easily, but I really hope you are the one. I hope that you are the person that completes my world. He stood up and turned to the camera. He was wearing a large black hat with a rim, a brown trench coat, dress pants, a black button-up, and dress shoes. He dresses really well. I kind of fell for him at this point. I wanted to know who it was. Angela, I've been watching you for over a month now, and I can say that you are the most perfect human I have ever observed. Ever. I've fallen so deeply in love with you that it makes me sick sometimes. Lovesick. Ha ha ha. Well, that's all for now. I'll introduce myself to you soon enough. I love you. Static. Oh my goodness, my stalker is actually hot, like insanely hot, and rich. Potentially. I really wanted him to introduce himself to me. I wouldn't mind meeting him. I know in these circumstances I probably shouldn't want to meet him, but I've been lonely lately, and been wanting some companionship, you know. It isn't too much to ask for. That night, after work, I wore my silk pajamas. They were a little big on me, but extremely comfortable. I got ready for bed as usual, but I couldn't sleep. All I could think about was the man in the DVD, how he was dressed so well, his voice was like music to my ears. I kind of wanted to stay awake to see if he would come once again, but I fell asleep after laying down for a short time. When I woke up in the morning, I wasn't wearing the silk pajamas anymore. I was wearing my usual shorts and t-shirt to sleep. I swear that I remember wearing my silk pajamas. I went to the washroom to check my laundry basket, and surely my work clothes from last night that I changed out of were there. Someone changed me out of my clothes and put on new ones for me. Someone was in the house last night. I ran outside my room, and sure enough, everything was in order. I looked on the living room table, and there was a DVD there. My Dearest Angela, it was titled. I open it with anxiety and put it into the DVD player. Static. Oh my God, it's me sleeping. My dearest Angela, how I am so glad that we finally meet. I've seen you on the street. I've walked past you many times, I can smell the shampoo you use. I've touched your skin before, but not this delicately. I hope that I won't wake you, but if you do wake, please know that I will restrain you, and we'll have some fun. If you don't wake, I'll just take a little memoir of you until the next time." I was watching myself be undressed by this man. He was wearing a black sweater, blue jeans with his hood on, and a baseball cap to cover his face. "Angela, you are so beautiful. You are as divine as an angel. I hope that you see this video, that I've seen the most intimate parts of you, the most intimate moments of you, when you are sleeping. Please know that I mean no harm to you, unless you fight me. I love you." He took my favorite pair of shorts and t-shirt from the drawer. It was like he knew everything about me, what I enjoyed wearing, where everything in my room was. He dressed me and left. Static. The next morning, I called sick into work. I was too afraid to do anything. This man could come into my house and do anything to me. He could have killed me, but he didn't. Thank God. I peered out my window to see if there was anyone on the street and suspicious individuals, but I couldn't see any. I got in my car and drove towards my workplace to see if anyone was following me. Sure enough, I saw a silver Toyota Camry, not too many cars down, following me since I took a left off my street. He knew exactly when I would go to work and the route I would take. I knew it was him. I continued to go towards my workplace to make sure that I had the right person, and when I parked my car and walked up the steps of my workplace, I turned around. I spotted that silver Toyota Camry as he drove off. As soon as he drove off, I got back in my car and drove towards my parents' house. I rang the doorbell as soon as I could, as soon as I parked my car outside their house. "Mom, open the door, please. I know you are home. Please." I was sobbing at this point, worried that if I was outside for too long, he'd notice me, and he'd notice where my parents live. The door opened. "Angie! What is wrong? Come inside!" Immediately, I ran for the blinds. I closed them all and turned on a little lamp in the living room. "Mom, sit down, please. I need to tell you something." "Honey, what's wrong?" "Mom, I have a stalker. He was in my room last night and he undressed me and took my pajamas, then put new clothes on me." "What? Have you called the police?" "No, I thought it was fun and games at first, but then he decided to come into my house. If he knew how to do that, he could do anything." "Mom." "Joe! Come here!" My father ran down the stairs. Angie! Oh my God, what's wrong, baby?" "Daddy, I have a stalker, and last night he came into my house." "Baby, I'll contact my friend who's part of the police. I'll take care of it, okay?" "Okay." My mother held me in her arms as I was sobbing, afraid at what happened last night. I thought everything would be fine. I thought my parents would take care of me. That night, I went into the guest room and laid down in the bed. The room was on the second floor of the house, with the window towards the back of the house, so I felt a little safer that he wouldn't find me here, and if he did, he wouldn't be able to climb to the second floor of the house. I changed into the pajamas I borrowed from my mom, and I went to bed. Thud. I heard something, like a dull noise. "Mom?" No response. "Dad?" No response. I stepped out of my room and heard a door close downstairs. It was the back door. I looked towards my parents' room, and the door was slightly opened. I opened the door. "Mom, Dad?" "Honey," my mom was gasping for air. "Get out of here." I turned on the light. My eyes opened wide, mouth dropped, tears began to flow down my face. My father's head had dropped onto the floor, severed from his body, which was stabbed many times. My mother had her throat cut and was laying in blood, pooling underneath her. I screamed in horror, crying, anxious. There was a DVD. I walked towards the DVD and it was labeled, "You shouldn't have run away, I missed you." I don't know what to do, I don't know where to go. He'll always find me. He killed my parents. I didn't watch the DVD that night. I couldn't sleep, but I got a text in the morning from an unknown number. "Angela, watch the DVD. Help, please. I went on a date with my stalker. In order to understand this story, I have to take you back a few years. I was in college, recently graduated in May, yay for me having a useless degree, my first semester of sophomore year to be exact. I was in a sort of long-distance relationship, but as he was 6 hours away, we mutually decided not to be exclusive and were fine with going on dates and the like as long as we kept each other in the loop. It seemed like I had exhausted the extent of my dating choices. All my close guy friends weren't my type, seeing the same people at the same places day in and day out, etc. I had a friend who'd had success, hookups, from OkCupid, and decided that the least I could do was create a profile. The idea of internet dating really scared me. I have an anxiety disorder, so meeting new people is difficult enough already. Not to mention meeting a total stranger who is interested in me, past platonic. I had the account for about a month and had, as many women can attest to, my fair share of disgusting, deplorable, just all-around ridiculous messages. I had had conversations and even met for drinks with a couple very nice guys. Nothing seemed to be sticking, though. I began to get messages from a user, H00KEDUP. They started off pretty normally, and I engaged in conversation. To be quite honest, from his UN, I thought he was just a drug dealer trying to make connections. Soon his messages got pretty strange. One in particular I noticed, "You go to Penn, right?" And of course I would answer right away that, yes, I did indeed go to Penn, only to realize a few moments later that nowhere on my profile mentioned the school I went to, and I had never mentioned it to him or any other user on the site in private messages. I got pretty creeped out and blocked him. Simple as that. Here's where things get stranger. I got a private message not 10 minutes later from a different user. I can't remember the username off the top of my head, probably just letters and numbers. "I figured you just blocked me, but I wanted to make sure. That's very rude to do, Nagamexov." I told him something along the lines of, "I don't really feel comfortable talking to you and would hope you'd respect that and move on, please. And good luck in your search on this site." I literally would get messages from him every fucking minute. It was incessant. I got so used to messages from him that they became commonplace when I logged on, and just another thing for me to ignore on the site. Then I started to notice a trend. A lot of guys giving me 5 stars, I paid to be able to see who was rating me, all went to Penn. Now, it's not uncommon for a person to say, majoring in blank at blank, when living in a large city with many universities. But this was strange because literally, all of them just said, Penn 2014, and every single profile only had one photo of a vaguely attractive male, never close enough to the picture to really see what they looked like. Every single one of them messaged me, and I even corresponded with some before I noticed the trend. I got really creeped out and slowed way down on my usage of the site. One day at the climbing gym, an employee came over to me and seemed very disgruntled and kept looking over his shoulder and asked me to step into the employee office. Me, being the anxious person I am, thought I did something wrong. He then proceeded to tell me a man had just called in and asked if Nagamsov was a member. Of course, the employee said that they can't give out any sort of information like that. He was angry and demanded that he know if I climbed at that gym, otherwise he would not buy a membership and would write to the owner. He also tried to say he was surprising me from out of town, and the employee merely asked his name and said, No, she can't know I'm surprising her. The employee said that he would consult with his boss and call back and ask for a number to reach him when the man hung up the phone. Something told me this had something to do with OkCupid. I just knew in my gut. I started to feel less and less comfortable with the site and pretty much only agreed to meet guys in very public places and only after we had shared pictures back and forth, etc. Nothing of significance, that I know of, happened for months. I had sort of forgotten about the whole thing and gone on a couple of amazing dates, had a few hookups here and there. It's the 21st century, grow up. One of the dates I remember best was a really nice day trip to a state park very close to the city. We hiked for about 2 hours and got eaten alive by mosquitoes. We went to a nice little burrito place and had a generally nice time. He was very quiet and seemed to compliment me way too much. It seemed like if he wasn't silent, he was either giving me a compliment or asking me about other guys on OkCupid. He seemed really offended when I told him he wasn't the first guy I'd met from the site and even used the word gold digger, which he apologized for about a minute later. Overall, the date wasn't bad. He just wasn't my type. And I left the date realizing I knew little to nothing about him, and he practically knew everything about me. I didn't really think about this at the time, though, and probably went on 3 dates after this. That's when the messages started. I was getting messages on OkCupid endlessly, non-stop, from so many different accounts at all hours of the day. So many guys calling me a whore and slut and saying I should kill myself, etc. I would report every single one of them. Then I started getting messages from people whose profile pictures were pictures of me at Chipotle, pictures of me in a seminar or lecture, pictures of me near my apartment, pictures of me riding my bike. Every single account had at least 5 different pictures of me, and from all different days. Half of the pictures were so old I couldn't even remember the last time I had worn my down jacket or rain boots, etc. The messages stopped. All but one. I began getting messages from a member called H000KEDUP. See that subtle little difference? Just one more zero, and he could talk to me again and show himself to me and not hide behind 93,489,234 other accounts. He asked if I was having fun on the site. I told him to back the fuck off, or I would call the police. He told me how easy it would be for him to just win me over and have no idea it was him. He assured me he had money and connections to shut me up. He was totally back and forth. 1 second, he would tell me how much I was worth and how I should only be with him because he was the only guy who could take care of me, and the next, he'd tell me how I was such a slut for being on the site and how I should kill myself because I'd go to hell anyway for being such a whore, etc. I never responded to his messages. He would send one about every 5 minutes, and I wish at the time I would have made screenshots, but honestly I was so fed up. I wasn't playing into his little act, and I wasn't going to feed the beast. Finally, one day the messages stopped. At first I was a bit relieved, but then put off. Where had he disappeared to? If he knew where I was all the time, based off of the pictures, what was he up to now? Around 8 p.m., I got my final message from him. If we don't meet up again right now, I'm going to end it. I saw that as a good thing. I told him, I've never met you in the first place. Hiding in the bushes while I walk to class hardly counts as meeting me. Go fuck yourself. Don't speak to me again. And he didn't. A few days later, the police were at my door with a search warrant. They had reason to believe I was involved in a suicide and took my laptop away as well as searched and found tiny cameras in my ventilation system all around my apartment. They assured me that I was in no trouble and recommended I stay with a friend or family member. I was so freaked out and felt I had no answers, but realized that whoever this fucker was, he was dead, and he had literally eyes on me 24/7. I just couldn't fathom how he knew so much about me and how he got into my apartment. A week and a half later, my answer came. I had met him before, actually seen him over 100 times and not realized it. I would pass him walking in and out of my building. I would see him every 6 months when my air filter needed replacement. I would see his family picture literally every day as I checked my mail. Oh, and I also went on that date to the park and burritos with him. My stalker was my landlord's son.